Hi, everybody. Everybody hear me okay? Yeah, there's never usually a problem with that. Make sure I can use the clicker. Awesome. Well, I am excited to be back, and I do. Every time I see RJ and I see him up here, and I've commented to Randy, he's doing such a great job. When I first met RJ, he was just such a little kid, running around the office, never saying much. And now look at him. I do have this kind of big sister thing with him, and I'm quite proud of all the things that he's doing. That's just a little side note. So we'll get back to it now. Last year we talked about, Dr. Duran came in and talked about the new GI Pro 3 product, and it was very overwhelming. It's the first time we're hearing it. The thing we probably went home with was, it's a brand new product, and it's going to help with a bunch of gastrointestinal issues, and DAC is the only supplement company that's going to have access to it. But what else did we really remember? So what I wanted to talk about today, this afternoon we'll talk about some other things, is I wanted to go back. Maybe I can't work the clicker either. Is it just delayed? Okay. So we'll go back, and I just think everybody, every time you hear me speak, we always talk about the digestive system, and there's so many people in this audience who have heard me speak, so they've seen these slides, but over and over, I think it's really important that we just go back through it. We get a little bit of kind of gastrointestinal health overview so that we can remember, we can go back through the GI Pro 3. If you pull out your packet, there's a couple of pieces of paper in the back. So what we've done this year is, with everything, we hear the feedback and we work harder, we progress. And one of the feedbacks was, it's really cool information. We really like this GI Pro 3, but I'm still not super confident on how to describe it to people, how to talk about it. So this piece of paper here is in the back, and I think that is going to really help, really sets out the problem, the solution, and then on the back, how this product is actually going to work. And the other one is just a real easy cheat sheet on where it is, because I know that's been a bit of a challenge. So this is where we've got the Butapearl Z and the chromium. Yeah, have we got a problem? It's not working. Okay. Tech support. Okay, so let's get into the gastrointestinal tract real quick. We'll go through this overview because everything that we're talking about is centered around the gut. So remember, the teeth are the first part of the digestive tract. Everybody remember that? Get your horse's teeth floated. When the horse chews, he kind of chews in a circular motion. So it's really important that you get the horse's teeth floated regularly. Otherwise, he's not going to be able to chew. He's not going to be able to swallow any of the food we're giving him. Then if we move to the stomach, it's really small in relation to the rest of the digestive tract. You see that? I got it highlighted in pink. That's the stomach, then the small intestine, and then the large intestine, hindgut is at the end. But you can all agree that the stomach is really small, right? Yeah? Yeah. It's really small because in the wild, the horse didn't eat large meals, right? So we now bring him into stalls and we feed him large meals and we kind of compromise that stomach environment. But the stomach is really small. If you cut a window in it, I don't think I've got that picture, no. If you cut it in half, there's two distinct regions of the stomach. The bottom region where you've got that mucus coating, and the top section that has no protection, and acid is secreted by little cells down in the bottom part of that stomach. Food moves through there pretty quickly. It's the reason why I don't like to feed meals of any more than, say, 3 to 5 pounds in a single meal, because that stomach is small. Remember, the horse is a grazing animal. He's meant to be continually grazing small amounts more frequently. If we move then to the small intestine, big long garden hose. If you lay it out, I don't know how long this building is, but the small intestine is about 70 feet in length. We've got enzymes here that are breaking down food and being absorbed here, carbohydrates, proteins, minerals, fats. Quite small. Your sugars and starches are going to be absorbed here. Then we move to the hindgut of the horse. And so really, when we're talking about a lot of our gastrointestinal health products, like the Rescue Aid, the digestive feed additive, the ingredients that are in those have to make it to the hindgut. And that's what is a challenge with a lot of products, is making sure that they're going to actually get to the hindgut, get through that acidic stomach and through that enzymes in the small intestine. But the hindgut, just a little overview so we can get into the meat of it, it starts with the cecum. It's like a blind sac. It's like if this building just had one door in and out, that's like the cecum. So it's easy for gas to build up there. This, from here on back, is where we have all the fermentation, right? There's a trillion different types of bugs that live here in the hindgut of the horse that we collectively refer to as the microbiome. And their primary goal is to ferment fiber. So the largest part of the horse's diet is fiber, coming from hay and pasture, right? That's absolutely critical. There's nothing in a bag or a bucket that is more important than the hay or the pasture that you feed your horse. And variety in those fiber types as well. So when we're talking about team, I'm always thinking of all the different ways that I can kind of connect the team. The horse's whole diet is a team. It's a team of all the different parts. And a lot of times we forget about the fibrous portion of the diet. We really get hyper-focused on the supplement we might be feeding or the grain that we might be feeding and forget about the fiber that we're feeding the horse. But it's an integral part of that team, and we can't forget about it. So anyway, the cecum here, you can see that the rate of passage in the stomach, it can be as short as 15 to 30 minutes for food to pass through the stomach. Small intestine, we're looking at, 3 to 4 hours. But now just this section of the hindgut, it can take up to 7 hours. So we have much slower rate of passage through the hindgut of the horse. This blue area, the large colon. So who's ever stuck their head in a bale of hay that was baled slightly damp? Any of you who've heard me talk know this, right? You've all done it. I know it wasn't your hay, but is it hot or cold in there? Hot, exactly. So one of the byproducts of the bacteria in the hindgut when they're breaking down, fermenting that fiber, is they create heat. So in the wintertime, what's the best thing to feed your horse? Hay. And just one type of hay? Variety of hay, right? Because when we look at all those bugs, they all eat a different type of fiber. It's really critical that we create diversity of all those bugs. When we're talking about as I mentioned earlier, any of the ingredients that go into these digestive health supplements, we need to make sure that they're actually arriving to the hindgut of the horse. And as we get into it, and if you remember last year, that was one of the key issues with a lot of these gastrointestinal ingredients, the probiotics that we're putting into our supplements, is that they're not actually arriving alive. The small colon, we're just absorbing any moisture out of that non-digested fibrous material and forming fecal balls so that you can spend your days cleaning that up later. So brief overview of how it's supposed to work. And I always like to start out with how it's supposed to work, because I get all the questions on, well, how it's broken down and what's happening, all these problems that are occurring. And if we don't know how it's supposed to work, we don't really know what we're trying to go back to. What are we trying to fix? Where if we don't really understand what is how the horse is supposed to work. So I mentioned the microbiome. It's collectively all these different types of bugs, live organisms that live in the hindgut. It actually acts as another organ. It communicates with the brain. The brain can send signals to that group of bacteria. Those bugs can communicate with the brain. It's absolutely critical. I know that there's a lot of farriers in the audience, and the old saying used to be no hoof, no horse. For me, it's no gut, no horse. Because if you don't have a good, healthy gut, then you don't have good, healthy feet anyway. So everything starts with the gut. It harvests nutrients, it's extracting energy. One of the key points here that I want to highlight is that the microbiome, all those microorganisms, one of the things they can do is resist the colonization from bad bacteria, pathogens, so bad bugs. These disorders that we see with diarrhea, chronic diarrhea, even some kind of respiratory disorders can all start from bad pathogens colonizing the gut. The 70% of your immune system starts in the gut, okay? So it's absolutely critical that we do everything in our power to keep the gut healthy. I remember our next speaker that's going to come up. I'm so excited to hear Jenna Antonucci speak. But I remember years ago when I first started working with her, and gut health has always been such a huge part of her program, and she would take these thoroughbred horses that have, you know, just a predisposition for not having great feet anyway from New York, and take them to Florida and take their shoes off, change their diet, really excellent quality hay. The DAC, digestive feed additive, and her farrier just couldn't understand why the horses' feet grew so quickly. You know, their hoof quality was just amazing in a horse that already has a genetic predisposition for not having great feet. So in good programs, gut health is the center. We've talked about how we have this breakdown in the hindgut. You've heard me talk about leaky gut. On the, I think would be the left-hand side, you can see the little triangle that says healthy gut. In the hindgut of the horse, there are these little cells that line the intestinal wall, and they're meant to stay tightly squeezed together. If you put your hands together, you can even interlock your fingers. Those three little lines there are representing what we call tight junctions. You can think about them like Velcros, and they're meant to keep those cells tightly squeezed together so that nothing's flowing down between those. Again, that is in a normal, healthy horse that doesn't have stress in its life, that eats a wide variety of different fibers. So how many horses did I just describe? 0. All right. The majority of our horses just have some small to, large amounts of stress in their life. Live in stalls, we trailer them, we ride them, we do all these things that stress them, but that also is part of horse ownership. So, I used to think, well, how can we take all the stress away from these horses? That's the key. We've got to take all the stress away, and then all these problems will go away. And that is just impossible. There's always going to be stress in our lives and in our horses' lives. So how do we mitigate that? What can we add to the diet? We can talk about management to help that, but also what can we add to the diet that will help us with mitigating this stress? And the first step is really understanding what that stress is doing to the animals. So on the other side of the slide, not sure what left or right, but let's just the other side, you can see that yellow triangle, and you can see the little yellow dots. Those 3 lines, that tight junction, it's broken. So that's representing a horse that has had some kind of stress in its life, whether it be environmental, feed changes, disease state. We know that everything stresses horses. And one of the things that can happen to those cells lining the intestinal wall is it's like weak Velcro. Those Velcros were nice and tight, and then they start to break down, and then those cells slightly separate, and you can see non-digested food particles now and other things that are floating through the intestinal tract that should be just floating out into the manure are now floating into the bloodstream. All right? Who's ever been stung by a bee? We've all been stung by a bee, right? What happened? Got stung right here. What happened? You just get a little swelling, right? You get a little localized swelling because there's a foreign body in my hand, and my body reacts by sending signals to that area to get rid of it. What happens if non-digested food particles and crud from the digestive system are now in my whole bloodstream? What's my body going to do? It's literally going to try and kill itself because now we've got all of these foreign particles, not just in that one little bee sting, now it's in my whole body, right? So we see symptoms like allergy-like symptoms. You've heard me say I don't actually believe that most horses are allergic to ingested food particles. When you go and your veterinarian does an allergy panel on your horse and it lights up like a Christmas tree, and you call me and say, well, he's allergic to everything except air, I don't know how we're going to feed him. First thing I say is, he's probably not allergic to any of those things. He's right now is allergic to life itself. And he's got all of this stuff just floating around in his bloodstream that he's trying to get rid of. We've got this whole body inflammation. That's going to show up in allergy-like symptoms. Is we fix the gut and we can then fix the horse. So, forage. I've just said over and over again, forage is for horses. It's the most important thing in the horse's diet. But what if I then told you that horses can't actually digest fiber? You're like, she's crazy. She tells me every time I talk to her, tell me about the hay. Hay's so important. It's the bugs that live in the horse's hindgut that actually digest that fiber. So again, so critical. It is the most important component of the horse's diet. They glean so many nutrients out of it, but it's also important that we keep that microbiome really healthy, because that's actually what's breaking down that fiber. Oops. Bacteria, protozoa, fungi ferment plant fiber, create energy. Different B vitamins are another byproduct of that, the microbiome breaking down all that fiber. What we see in our performance horses, though, these are just a couple of things that we've seen. Originally, we first started seeing chronic diarrhea in horses and weight loss and dietary changes we knew caused that. This is kind of the light bulb moment that something that's going on in the horse. We rapidly change the diet and we see these symptoms in the horse. That was kind of the first realization that this grouping of microbiome, these bugs, we've only just recently started calling it the microbiome, these bugs were actually having such a huge impact on outward signs of that horse. You've all heard about antibiotics, right? So we get into the biotics, we get into these ingredients or these technologies that we're adding. And biotics, so the antibiotics, they've been developed over the years, originally quite broad spectrum, to become more specialized, but they kill or destroy bacteria, right? So if we think about probiotics, prebiotics, and antibiotics, antibiotics are killing those bad bugs, and sometimes the good bugs too. But if we think about that equine gut, we know, and I've changed this slide. I always had this one come in second, and I would say to myself, I really have to change it. And I finally changed it. So the beneficial microbes that are living in the gut, that's what we're trying to support. Everything we do is to try and keep diversity there in those bugs so that they can do their job. If you hear me talk about gastric ulcers, or talk about kind of the mucus lining in the gut, or talk about these hindgut cells, the horse has a lot of its own protective mechanisms. They create mucus that protects that bottom part of the gut. There's bugs in the hindgut that create butyric acid, and butyric acid's only goal is to feed those intestinal cells, feed those tight junctions to keep them healthy. But we also know that when the horse gets sick or stressed, those protective features are one of the first things that seem to be overwhelmed, and they can't keep up. So instead of trying to add something synthetic to the diet or band-aid it, what our approach is to fully understand these pathways in the animal that are naturally there. That's their own natural defense mechanism, and just support that, boost that. Why recreate the wheel when the horse is already telling us? Horses talk to us a lot. Sometimes we don't always listen, but like we're listening to you, we also are listening to the horses. And we've investigated, and we're understanding these natural defense mechanisms, and we're really just trying to boost those. So these beneficial microbes, we're trying to boost those by adding probiotics to the diet, or prebiotics. So probiotics, the definition of a probiotic is that it is a live microorganism, right? And science has evolved. We're not just adding random live microorganisms to the horse, we're adding live microorganisms that actually are ones that horses need. It's why we don't cross and say, okay, this is a probiotic for a dog. Oh, I've got extra, I'll just feed some to my horse. Or probiotics for me. I am not a horse and your horse is not a human, so I know we love our horses, but what works for me does not necessarily work for your horse. So we need to make sure that we're adding the correct bugs to the correct animals. And so probiotics are just adding more live organisms to boost that microbiome, right? It's adding more. But they also need food, because you can add all the good bugs you want, but if they've got nothing to eat because the horse isn't feeling great, he's not eating, he doesn't have a wide diversity in his diet. So we add prebiotics. But also, back when we first started adding prebiotics, we knew things like beet pulp, soy hulls. These are super fibers. There are other prebiotics that we add. But now we're making it even more specialized, that we're adding the correct prebiotics, the right food. This gentleman down in the front, he hates Brussels sprouts. I have no idea, but I'm just going to say he hates Brussels sprouts. So if I fed him a bunch of Brussels sprouts, he wouldn't want to eat that. So we need to make sure that we're adding the correct food, the correct prebiotics for the bugs that we're adding and for the bugs that are internal. Then we've talked a lot about there are metabolites. There are things that these bugs make, and we call those postbiotics, right? There's B vitamins, there's the butyric acid. These are just metabolites that those bugs make that confer a health benefit to the horse. But technology has gone one step further, right? And you can Google, if you Google, you can go online and you can find research paper after research paper on prebiotics and probiotics and microbes and postbiotics. But this new term that Dr. Duran did float last year, and I said, you can't say it too much because it's just overwhelming, this proteobiotic. And we'll get into that, and I really want you to, in super simple terms, understand. But again, back to why did we do this? There was a research study published in 2021, and it actually was a review, and there are some other research papers that they had looked at, evaluating commercial probiotic supplements, right? That are available. I mean, they actually, in the study, list all of the probiotics that they evaluated. And what they evaluated, they took 11, they randomly selected 11, and they evaluated that claim. So the guaranteed analysis, that law-abiding label, that guaranteed analysis, when you put it there, it means that's a legally binding document. Unfortunately, none of them met the label claim. So either they were the wrong bugs or all the bugs had died. And there were lots of different reasons why. I don't actually believe that companies are just out there trying to scam us by putting dead bugs in there. I think that it's transport, it's heat, it's shelf life. There are so many different things. But again, knowledge is power. We know that all of these things are detrimental to probiotics, and most probiotics that you actually buy for yourself, you're supposed to put in the fridge anyway. And that's really where we partnered with Kemin Industries with this problem. The problem is horses, go all the way back to the horse, right? There are these symptoms that we're seeing in horses, this chronic diarrhea, these allergy-like symptoms, this change in behavior, that we cannot equate to just gastric ulcers. We need to step back and stop focusing just on the stomach, but this whole horse is just not doing well, and what we've got on the market right now is not working, right? The solutions that are available just aren't meeting the mark. So how can we work as a team, and who is the partner best suited to providing this to the general public and the horse owner? And so that's where you have this PHN Chem and DAC relationship. And the solution so far, first step, is GI Pro 3. And this will be evolving. As we learn more, this is not going to be a stagnant product. This is going to continue to evolve. And this is where we have this term proteobiotic. So we're not just a postbiotic or a probiotic or a prebiotic, but a proteobiotic. And I told Steve he wasn't allowed to say it more than once, and I just in 1 second said it 4 times. Proteobiotic. And this is where you pull out this sheet as well. And we can chat more, and all of you dealers know that every month I have a dealer webinar, and you don't have to have an internet connection. All you need to do is have a phone, and you can get on and listen. If you're a new dealer and you think, oh, I've missed out, there's so much available. But we will go into this in more detail as well. But the cool thing about these proteobiotics is they can change the bad bacterial population by, I'll say, quorum sensing. That's the only time I'm going to say it. Michael says it to me all the time. I'm like, what are you talking about? You can't say quorum sensing. It means nothing. What it means is the communication between cells. So these bad bacterial cells, the proteobiotics, this GI Pro 3, it can interfere with the communication. So these bad bugs, when they're proliferating in your gut, trying to take hold, they are so effective at seeing your weakness, seeing weaknesses in the gut, and capitalizing on that. And we're going to go there, and they'll say, hey guys, here, all the bad guys, come over here, and we're going to proliferate here because this is a weak area. This is a weak animal. And what these proteobiotics do is they interfere with that communication. That's one way. They're interfering with that communication, and then that triggers this cascade of events so they can't adhere to the cell wall, replicate, and stop this invasion. So super simplified, they interfere with the communication of bad bugs, all right? That is something that our postbiotics and our probiotics have not been doing. This is a new class. So hopefully that is the thing you go home with. They can interfere with communication. It's that 3-strain proteobiotic strain. So again, it's a team. It's a 3-pronged. 3 is better than 1. Individually, they're all great, but if you put them together as a team, they're even more successful. We know that they also, all of those things that we talked about earlier, the pelleting, the manufacturing, they survive. We tested all of that. We talked about that last year, and I think that was made pretty clear that we overcame all of those kind of manufacturing shelf life issues. But what I really wanted to get across is more, how is this actually working? How are we doing this? The acidity in the stomach, unlike the cow, feeding these gut health supplements to cows is easy. They have to open their mouth and swallow it, and then we're right there where all that microbiome live. But in the horse, you've got to get through the stomach and the small intestine. So again, if you've got a bunch of cow supplements and you think, oh, I'm just going to feed these to my horse, they won't work, right? The horse is a lot more complex. We know that day in and day out. Horses just try to trick us at every level. Shelf life, again, this isn't a product that we have to worry about shelf life because actually it's the acid in the stomach that peels away that outer coating that kind of activates that. So sitting in a meal, sitting in a pellet, in a tube, in a paste, the shelf life is quite long, so we don't have to worry about that. It's inhibiting those bacteria that cause that chronic diarrhea, those respiratory issues. So Clostridia, Rhodococcus, Streptococcus, so strangles, Salmonella, also that diarrhea, that also lives in the soil. And so that's the other issue is a lot of these pathogens live in the environment. And by putting this GI Pro 3 into the supplement and feeding it to the horse, it's not doing anything to change the environment the horse lives in. So again, this is not a purple pill that's going to fix everything. You've still also got to make sure that you're cleaning the environment and doing all those things. But it's one part of the team. It's a part of the puzzle. We also, by adding this, over the years, you will decrease that load in the environment as well. Oh. So I want to get to here, because here is actually, I've broken down this little gray piece of paper. because I want to give you tools. Not only do I want to give them to you, but I want you to understand how to use them, okay? So we broke this down into what's the problem? What is going on? Is your horse at their best? And you can pull it out and we can go right through it here. Diarrhea, inconsistent stool, anxiety, poor behavior, allergy-like symptoms, poor performance, poor hair coat quality even. I've tried every coat supplement under the sun. I've tried Bloom, I've tried oil, and they don't work. The horse's coat still looks terrible. Well, maybe the issues are a lot deeper than just the hair level. You know, Bloom and oil are going to work great if we've just got a hair coat or a shine issue, but if there's something deeper going on, then we need to investigate further. Stress, diet, the environment can impact your horses. You can show this to your clients. You don't have to be the expert. You can follow along with this and show them so you can explain to them what's going on. You know, the GI tract, the gastrointestinal tract, we've said, is responsible for absorbing nutrients, fiber passage, more than 70% of the immune system. So when your horse is in a disease state, we know that potentially the gut is breaking down. Again, you're showing this to your clients. So the solution that we've come up with, that you're providing to your clients then, is there is a technology that we've included into the DAC products, into the Rescue Aid and the DDA at the supportive level. And you know, in your catalog, you can go through and you can see the little logo. It's actually in a lot of other products, just at a more of a, I should flip-flop those words, at a supportive level, a small amount, and in the DDA and the Rescue Aid, in that therapeutic level. It's proven, science-backed, guaranteed. We've done the research. We know that this technology will actually arrive alive to the hindgut. We don't have the issues that other technologies have had. And then putting the pieces together, you know, when something is new, it's like, it's hard to describe it to people. It's hard to get that concept across to customers that may not have heard of something like this before, right? It is so brand new. Literally, when I put the word proteobiotic into Google, not many papers came up. It is brand new. We are cutting edge. We're on the edge of research, and I'm excited about that. But I do know that comes with its own pitfalls, right? When you're trying to explain that to consumers that it's not a topic we're that familiar with, they can be a little hesitant. So hopefully this really helps. We put it in super, super simple form. So releases compounds, these proteobiotics release compounds that target the bad bugs, protect the good bugs. By stopping that communication, can also release proteins that have anti-inflammatory benefits and promote intestinal health. So if you want more details, more in-depth details, we can certainly provide those to you. But I really hope that this will be a very simple tool that will help you with the sales of products that have this technology in there, and know that you guys are the only supplement company that have access to this, right? Now, if we want to get into the proteobiotic, prebiotic, probiotic, you can explain it to them here. It's on your sheet. So I think I've got 57 seconds left if you have a question, and I will be back later for the Q&A as well. Yes, sir? So is the GI Pro 3 in the probiotic paste, or will it be available? Will we put it in the GI Pro, in the paste? Probiotic paste? No, we talked about it, and we have it in the Rescue Aid paste, and we're continuing to discuss. So if that's something that you all think, yeah, I'd love to have it in the Pro paste, we could certainly look at putting it there. The probiotic paste, for any of you that aren't that familiar with it, it's just probiotics, just live microorganisms. We recommend that if a horse has been on antibiotics or even young growing foals. So. Yes, ma'am. That is a great comment. So when I was talking about the symptoms and the indicators that maybe something's wrong, her question, we typically look at kind of the physical form of manure, but she was asking about the actual color of the manure. And certainly color is more indicative of change in feed, but smell even. I know I have beef cows and I've started feeding them a bunch of corn and their manure is very acidic. So certainly if there is more unpleasant smells, I mean, we're horse owners, we like the smell of poop or we wouldn't be in the business. But, you know, if it was a more unpleasant smell, that would certainly warrant investigation. Maybe one more question and then we'll do the rest later. I can't see any, maybe, no. Okay, well, barbecue, and then the main event.
Well, thank you very much, Tania, and hopefully that reiterates a little bit on the GI Pro 3. So with that, we are going to take a break and then roll right into lunch. I know that I myself am looking forward to the city barbecue meal, so with that being said, you can use the restroom. We will start with this far table over here on the right side. Feel free to start over here, file around, and we'll just go make our way right down the lines on the tables. But quickly before we do that, let's do bow our heads for a quick silent prayer before we start.